Mold infections contribute to Crohn's and colitis up to 90% of the time in the clients that I see in my practice. So the question has to be asked, is mold causing your IBD? Well, you're about to find out because I'm going to show you what symptoms to look for to see if you have a mold problem. I'm going to show you how to test yourself and to test your home for mold. We're going to talk about what it looks like to detox from mold safely, and of course, what's required to reverse the damage that mold has already done to your body after this disease is now manifested. Contrary to what your doctors told you, Crohn's and colitis are reversible. Now, I've helped hundreds of people reverse their bowel disease, and I'm here to help you do it too, because inflammation always has a root cause. We just have to find it. This is the Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally podcast. Now, I do these live trainings in my Facebook group every single week and put the audios here for you to listen to. If you want to watch the video versions of these episodes, just click the link in the show notes to get access to our Facebook group and YouTube channel. And for weekly updates, information, tips, and tricks, you can sign up for our email list by clicking the link in the show notes below. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Josh Deck. I'm an IBD specialist, medical lecturer, and physician's consultant, as well as a scientific strategist and education director for the Root Cause for Crohn's Colitis organization. And today, I am showing you how to begin the process of healing from mold. Here's what we need to know. Mold affects up to 70% of all the homes in USA specifically, but also North America. And most mold actually goes unseen. Now, this can be because there's cheap building practices, all these eco-friendly materials which harbor mold. We see poor construction practices, which end up leading to things like, if you've driven past a construction site where there's just wood laying in the dirt and there's rain on top of it, maybe there's a tarp that's half-assed covering it. This is where the mold can get in immediately down to the studs. So there's poor construction, cheap materials, poor practices in lumber protection, not being treated properly, which leads to mold. The common understanding is that, well, an old home, a 1950s or early 1900s build might have mold. The truth is, brand new homes are typically worse for mold than older homes. And so we have to understand is that mold is also a frequent underlying factor or cause of autoimmune disease. It can even mimic Lyme disease, or of course worsen Lyme if you have it, as well as bowel disease. So it can look like autoimmune diseases. Mold is very easily inhaled. It's very easily absorbed through your skin. So if you're in mold remediation, if maybe there's mold in your air ducts, you don't know about it, you can be breathing it in. And then that mold actually trickles all throughout the house, gets into soft materials like clothing, couches, curtains, drapery, all that stuff, carpets. And then you absorb it and pop that up all over again. And it gets in and can colonize. And so mold can colonize in your sinuses. It can colonize inside of your gut. And colonizing means it grows like fungus. Like you see mold on a wall, it does that inside your body if we're not careful. And so HVAC and AC units are also hot spots for mold. And this will get, again, toxins in everything because they're being dispersed throughout the house like bloody confetti. And especially if you're in an area that has high humidity, typically 50 to 60%, especially for more than a few days, that's going to grow mold. If you're in a high humidity climate like Florida, that's basically the United States basement. It's hot, it's wet, and there's a lot of mold there as well as many other places. So we got to watch for humidity. So here's some hot facts we got to know about mold. But what I want to talk to you is about what mold is doing to your gut, what symptoms it's going to creating. So I'm going to go through each system in your body, everything from the gut to respiration to cardiovascular. We're going to talk about inflammation, cellular health, hormones, neurological, all kinds of symptoms or systems in your body that can be affected, and some of the main symptoms to look for. There are multiple dozens of symptoms that can be a clear indicator of mold. So let's get into those. The first one we're going to look for that mold is going to affect, of course, is going to be your gut microbiome. What is it doing to your microbiome? Well, first of all, it creates something called pleomorphing. It's just a fancy word that makes me sound smart. It comes from ancient Greek. What it means is changing the landscape or the architecture of your gut microbiome. So if you have a really nice, healthy balance of gut microbes and they're all looking really good, what happens when mold gets in there? Jacks everything up. And it just creates crazy overgrowth. So you get overgrowth of fungus, you get overgrowth of pathogenic or bad guys that are coming in. It wrecks your gut. It also is going to start to break down the gut lining or the integrity of the gut. And a leaky gut is one of the 3 pillars of autoimmune disease. It's going to disrupt all kinds of function and dysfunction. It's going to cause drainage issues, inflammation, and again, causing fungus. Mold is a fungus, but it's going to cause other fungi as well, like candida to overgrow. You might find yourself with pseudomonas, klebsiella, citrobacter, nasty bacterial overgrowth. They're called opportunistic. When they're given an opportunity in a crazy wild home to overgrow, that's what they do. And that's what's happening inside of your gut. So mold messes up your gut microbiome. Big problem. The next major thing we see mold creating for us is going to be a suppressed immune system. What does it mean to suppress your immune system? Well, it literally suppresses your body's ability to fight off infections. So you're actually more prone to infections, illnesses, viral infections, etc. It can actually overactivate your immune system. So it can actually take an immune system, which kind of like a teeter-totter is often well balanced. What it's going to do to that immune system, it's going to shift that balance and cause crazy increases or decreases in your immune responses. So it's no longer self-regulating. You're going to end up having worsened allergies, asthma, bowel disease, rashes, hives, all kinds of like typical allergy type symptoms as well. Histamine responses like MCAS or mast cell activation syndrome. Maybe certain histamine foods like vinegars and probiotics cause you bloat. And that can be from mold, because it drives up oftentimes what's called this Th2 immune pathway, and it can increase your responses, leading to more trouble. So you have to watch for that. If you have inflammation, it doesn't have to just be respiratory inflammation like asthma, but you can have inflammation anywhere, allergy type symptoms that are new that maybe you didn't have before. You're like, weird. About a year or so before or after I got bowel disease, I started developing these weird allergies, sensitivities, stuffy runny nose, sinus issues, etc. And now out of the blue, seems to come from nowhere. Well, maybe it was mold that caused this whole cascade, causing your immune system to go out of whack. The next thing that it does is we see chronic cases of inflammation. Chronic inflammation is what you're experiencing already in IBD. Chronic inflammation is what IBD is. It's an imbalanced immune system that never got relaxed. What does it do? Well, it actually increases inflammation in a lot of these areas that your body is actually working actively to try to fight. And so what I'm writing on the board here is we've got certain inflammatory pathways and cytokine pathways. Just for the sake of this, we're going to call these interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta, and TNF alpha. These are 3 primary inflammatory responses. If I'm not mistaken, they're driven up by stress, but drugs like Remicade and Humira suppress these same immune pathways. When they're overactive, you have inflammation. What does mold do? It causes inflammation in these same pathways. You get stressed out, you're inflamed, same pathways. You get mold, inflamed, same pathways. Drugs are trying to suppress it. So if they're trying to suppress it, is it possible you're suppressing a reaction to mold? Why not? I see it as a main driver all the time. It can lead to neurological inflammation, autoimmune conditions, chronic fatigue, and all kinds of stuff, especially under chronic inflammation. What else is mold going to do to your body? How do you know if it's in there? Well, let's look at it. Mold can create what's called mitochondrial. So we're going to call it mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria, if you think of them kind of like the battery house of a cell, these are the big guys. We need these. They create all kinds of types of energy for us. They help keep us running. They create our first line energy, etc. Very, very important. But here's what happens. Mold actually blocks the production of ATP energy. So your body cannot create the energy that it needs to get you to thrive. It can lead to all kinds of issues like oxidative stress, brain fog, poor recovery and memory issues, weakness, like severe weakness sometimes, chronic fatigue. Now again, it's all on a spectrum of how bad these things can be. But that's effectively what it does. It creates low energy production and all the things that come with it, like brain fog, fatigue, weakness. So that's a bad thing. We always want to make sure that we are trying to clean this mold out of our system or get ourselves out of these environments. The next thing it's going to cause issues with, we'll run over this one pretty quickly, hormones. If you have estrogen dominance, too much estrogen, maybe around your menstrual cycle you're getting a lot of PMS, breast tenderness, severe inflammation, anxiety, you're having issues. This is what can be created from mold. It can drop testosterone levels as well, cause thyroid dysfunction, all kinds of things because mold. We also see a lot of issues with neurological dysfunction. Again, that comes with a chronic inflammation, but let's talk about neurological. This one goes deep. I've seen this a lot with people. Neurological dysfunction like brain fog, memory loss, loss of balance, dizziness, ringing in the ears, mood swings like anxiety or even panic attacks because it drops your dopamine levels and decreases serotonin production. Also by messing up your gut where those neurotransmitters are made, but also the inflammation it can create in the brain. Lots of issues that can be created from mold. Other things we'll see is going to be dysregulated detox pathways, which burdens your liver, burdens your kidneys, impairs detoxification. You're going to find a depletion of a super powerful antioxidant called glutathione. When you're depleted here, big issue, you start to collect more toxins in your system. It leads to chemical sensitivities, poor tolerance of things like alcohol that your liver should be cleaning out, but it's not. We can have cardiovascular issues as well. So this might lead to frequent blood clots, cold hands, cold feet, poor oxygenation around your body that you might be experiencing as well. And a lot of this also contributes to a lot of main other issues we have, like poor nitric oxide production. And all these things combined can cause issues like dizziness, loss of balance, ringing in the ears, right? Memory issues along with neurological issues. They're all connected. What else can mold do for you? If you got issues with your sleep, mold can actually decrease the production of melatonin. So you're not going to sleep very well. You're going to find yourself not getting to a deep sleep. You're going to find your cortisol dysregulated where you feel like you're maybe waking up panicked or stressed, or you're somebody who has a trouble getting to sleep. And then maybe you get to sleep but wake up 2 to 4 a.m. And then maybe it takes you a while to get going in the morning, but you have a spike of energy, then an afternoon crash, and a spike again at nighttime, and you're doing this all the time. That's cortisol. So if you're not going to be sleeping really well, you're going to have insomnia, you're going to be a light sleeper or have chronic fatigue when your melatonin is not regulated properly. And of course, we have inflammation. That's going to be respiratory. So your lungs, your airways, asthma, bronchitis. Maybe you're going to experience chronic congestion of the sinuses or like a post-nasal drip that never goes away. These can all be issues with mold. So now we know what your symptoms might look like. We know 70% of US homes have them. In fact, fun sidebar, up to 40% of cases of asthma in the USA are attributed to mold. Why aren't we looking deeper into it for Crohn's colitis? Well, here's the thing. Really, here's another one. I'm just going to go sidebar. Really good telltale sign that you might experience is going to be static shocks. If you are somebody who frequently gets static shocks, carpets, doorknobs, cars, that type of stuff, not like when it's a bone dry winter, but just oddly all the time, could be a mold issue. So keep that in mind. There's always something to look for. So here's what we want to know. If you have any of these symptoms, you might be worried about mold. You're worried that you might be having mold issues that might be contributing to your IBD. What do you do about it? Well, let's talk first of all about confirming some of this. How do we test for mold? If you got mold, you're going to want to know. I'm going to want to know, how do we test? Easy ways to do this. You can get a great little test. It's called an ERMI, E-R-M-I. Not terribly expensive in the grand scheme of things. You get them from a few places. Immunolytics is a company. I'm not affiliated. I just like them. Immunolytics, EnviroBiomics, or thedusttest.com. Effectively, what they're doing is gathering dust from around your home. That's where mold settles. And they're going to collect the dust, culture it, and say, here's how much mold you have, whether it's good, bad, class 1, not a big deal, class 5, and move out immediately. So you get some really easy dust testing done. ERMI's, or again, thedusttest.com. I like the dust test. I actually just did an episode, I think it was 153, with Michael Rubino. He's a celebrity mold specialist, one of the top guys in North America, if not the world. He actually found and took the mold out of Gwyneth Paltrow's bathroom, worked with A-list celebrities and athletes all over the place. Brilliant dude. He came up with the dust test. It's a form of an ERMI, if I understand correctly. Don't quote me on that. But again, immunolytics, EnviroBiomics, $200 to $300 tops. And you can test all the rooms in your home and find out if you got mold or not. Other things you can do as well is going to be looking up a mold dog, D-O-G, dog the animal. They will sniff out your mold. I've got clients, and I'm like, dude, you got mold in your home. I have no doubt about it. I'm like, well, we'll wait and see. We'll try some other treatment first. I said, okay, fine. If that's what you want to do. We press and we press. We say, look, you're not getting any better. You're chronically getting sick. You've got all these issues. You've got allergies. Your immune system can't keep up. You've got neurological issues. You're inflamed. You're whatever. It's going to be mold. So they'll buckle and finally test it. Okay, I'm going to test my home for mold. And these things come up like crazy. Well, now the question might be asked, one client in particular had actually done a mold test in her home and it came up crazy high, like class 4, you guys should move out immediately. She's like, dude, we just renovated the home. It's brand new. We checked already for mold, I think, prior, if I'm not mistaken, but new renovation, new add-on, like we can't afford to move. We're not gonna move. It's our dream home. We just remortgaged our house to build on an addition to the home. What am I gonna do? So what they did, they found high levels of mold through an ERMI test. Then they went back and said, okay, let's see if we can find where it is specifically. We don't got to tear the house down or move. They hired a mold dog to come in, and it found the hot spots, go figure, was in the ventilation. Now here's the issue. Ventilation systems spray air everywhere. So those mycotoxins, that's the mold toxin, gets into everything. Every soft surface, every carpet, every couch, your clothing, your curtains, you name it. So it's got to be decontaminated. It's going to cost them 10 grand to fully decontaminate the home and clean out the HVAC and everything. But at the end of the day, they're willing to do it because she's sick, her kids are all sick, her husband's sick, everyone's sick because they're living in a toxic home. You cannot get better. It can only get so much better as your environment will allow you. If you're in a moldy home, if you should get better, let's say, I'll use my hands, you should get better, this much better, all the way up, 10 feet tall of better. Well, if you're living in a moldy home, you can only go up 2 feet or 3 or 4 feet based on your biology and how hard you're working, right? It's like trying to pour water on a fire while you're pouring gasoline. You can't heal a broken leg if you walk on it every day. Same concept. If you're continually re-entering a home that is continually retoxifying your body and you're getting mold everywhere, you're never going to heal. And so you have to A, look at remediating the home. B, you have to look at moving. Those are your options. Now there is a third option, which is less than ideal, but let's go through these together. So what do we do if you got mold in the home and mold is toxifying you and causing you issues with your health or contributing to IBD? I'm going to put them in order here for you, okay? Number 1, move. This sucks. This is never a fun conversation. Like, it's your forever home, it's your family home, it's expensive, whatever your situation is. Maybe you got to move. I hate having the mold conversation, but sometimes it has to be had. So if you have to move, you got to move. The second one is going to be to remediate. What does that mean? You tear down, it gets quartered off. You need professionals because even a lot of professionals screw this up and get toxins in the rest of the home. I've seen that before. But you need to tear down the wood or the drywall, whatever it is, repair the leaks, the roof, whatever's causing the problem. That's where the mold's coming in. It will forever be moldy until you fix, remediate, renovate, whatever kind of rumama you're going to do, okay? The next one, if you say, look, I can't afford to remediate. I'm not saying cheap out. If you can do it, you can afford it, do it. If you're like, I'm going to Disney this year. Screw your vacation, dude. Remediate your home instead, all right? But there is kind of an in-between option, which is like a, for now, this might help. And this is going to be taking care of the air quality. How are we going to do that? Well, if you're like, look, I'm going to move, but until I'm able, or I'm going to remediate until I get a contractor in, here's some things that we can do, okay? And this isn't saying bypass these options. These are going to be necessary 99.9% of the time. Don't assume you're in the 0.1, okay? Here's what we can do. We can just look at some basics. Open your windows. One of the number 1 causes of human toxicity per the EPA is actually indoor recycled or recirculated air. And that's in a standard home without the mold, let alone what's already in there, the dust, chemicals, toxins, whatever. So if you've got mold, open the windows. That's the first thing. Get as much fresh air through there as you possibly can. If you know there is one room in particular, I got 3 bathrooms in my house. One of them is crazy moldy. Cool. Close the door, plastic it off. Just don't go in there. That's a great time for now. Okay, that's that middle ground. You can also know that HVAC and AC is a huge place for mold. So let's close up some of those AC units, or we're going to close up some of those vents like your HVAC system. Just close off the vents. Put plastic up, tape it so air can't get through, or as little possible. And here's the one we need to know. Is think about the cabinets in your bathroom, right? If you look under the sink, here's my kitchen cabinet, bathroom cabinet. Great. I'm an artist. Yay. So your doors, think of that little crack between the doors. When you walk past that little slit, there's enough air to get through there that will cause mold toxins to go all over the place. So we have to watch for that. So any type of air is going to cause some kind of issue for you here. Okay, so watch that. Second thing we can look at, again, if you're going to block off an entire room, that's okay. We can also get filters, air filters, or a HEPA filter. You can even get these on Amazon now. I know Air Doctor is a good quality brand. No affiliation, I just know that they're high quality. You can get these filters for your home. Maybe you need a dehumidifier. What's a dehumidifier going to do? Well, remember we talked about mold loves an environment, anything over 50 to 60% humidity, it's going to thrive. Well, if you can take the humidity, the moisture out of your air with a dehumidifier for home, it's going to restrict the growth of mold. Here's something else. Turn off your Wi-Fi. This sounds crazy, but Wi-Fi can cause mold to grow 500% faster. 500%. If you got Wi-Fi in your home, one, shut it off at night as often as you can. Maybe throw a Faraday bag over it. You get one on Amazon. Number two, hardwire your shit. Get a wire, like, what do they call it? Ethernet cable. I even forget the names, it's been so long. But you can get a cord that will just plug into your computer. That's a great way to hardwire the internet, take down the Wi-Fi and some of those EMFs. Put your cell phone on airplane mode when you're not using it or at nighttime. Take down the EMFs, take down the Wi-Fi, because it causes mold to grow like crazy. The other option we can look at, instead of ripping down your entire home, is maybe strategically renovate piece by piece. So the bathroom's the moldiest. We're going to start there. 10K, maybe less. Depends who you hire. Don't shop on Craigslist. But you can get that mold remediated one room at a time, and it'll help take care of the total load of mold in your home. So you want to watch for that. Now, we've dealt with our home. We've dealt with our environment. We decided to move, remediate, or band-aid in the meantime before we can do one of the first two. That's okay. So the question now is, what do we do about the mold in your system? There's a couple of phases here. So the first one, we've already worked to remove the problem. I'm trying to spell remove while I talk. It's really difficult to do, to write on the board while I speak. Anyway, remove the problem. We've taken care of that. Remediation, open windows, whatever it looks like, we've done that. The second thing we want to look to do is, again, remove it from our body, which is going to be binding. We removed it from the home, we have to remove it from our body. There are specific binders or universal binders that work for mold. What does it mean to bind? It literally captures and collects. Some of them will actually trade ions and just say, hey, you can take this guy and I'll take the bad guy. And you can have this zinc mineral, this magnesium, and I'll take the toxin back. And it collects it and it goes out through the stool. That's great. You have cellular binders and detoxers, all kinds of goodies. There's lots of them out there. Things like humic and fulvic acid, charcoal, chlorella, zeolite, bentonite clay, certain probiotics like lactobacillus species, or specifically Saccharomyces boulardii. These are great probiotics that can bind onto mold. However, big, bold, capital, underline with an asterisk on it, seek professional help. If you bind too much too quickly, you can throw yourself in the hospital. You can get very, very sick. Do not address mold without at least consulting a professional. I'm not saying you need to work with one for 2-3 years. It can sometimes take adults to detoxify. Kids are pretty quick, but it can take a long time. I'm saying get over the hump, get over the bulk of it, seek a professional. It involves, yes, removing and binding. It involves proper drainage support. Remember, we talked about it compromises your toxic load, your liver and your kidneys. These are going to be junked up. They're going to need support. They can also create what's called biofilms. Mold can cause biofilms. If mold is causing films to build up within your body or in your bowel or in wherever it is, those biofilms need to be broken up. But those biofilms are like a thick layer. And all these toxins are actually held inside these biofilms. What happens when you burst these open? Well, they go everywhere into your blood, your lymphatic, etc. Triggers immune responses. Now you're inflamed, you're back in a flare, back in the hospital. We have to be careful with that. It's going to require a bit of immune control. Because, remember, mold is already imbalancing your immune system. What we need to do is regulate this as we're detoxing, as we're cleaning your system out. We have to regulate the immune system. There's a lot of layers to it. And then we also have to, as a fifth layer, is going to be reverse the damage done. Mold, we talk about what it does. It creates neuroinflammation, chronic inflammation, immune imbalances, pleomorphing, where it changes the landscape of your gut bacteria, causing overgrowth, causes leaky gut, damages gut lining. This damage has to then be reversed. So if you go to just arbitrarily take a bunch of binders, you can make yourself very, very sick. So we want to be very careful with that. On the other hand, seek a professional. If you're worried about mold, we can get you testing. You can test your home and you can test yourself through something called like an OAT or an organic acid test can detect some strains of mold, or go and get a mycotoxin test. Some of the labs that we use most need a practitioner, but they'll detect up to 36 strains of mold as determined to be the most toxic or harmful per the EPA. Great example is why is this important. I had a 5-year-old boy, he's now 6, we've been working with. When he came in to see us with his mom, severe ulcerative colitis, bleeding from the bowel, doctor said it's genetic, take these drugs for life. I said bullshit. We checked him out, turns out it was a mold infection. He had 16 strains of highly toxic mold in his body. The mold was in the home. It was brand new build, 3 years old. They couldn't see it. It was right down to the studs. They had to strip the entire home back to nothing, even sandblasting, to use baking soda, to blast all the mold off the studs before completely rebuilding and renovating their home from next to nothing. Very expensive, very time consuming, but it had to be done because their kid was sick, mom was sick, the other 2 kids were sick with PANS or PANDAS, neurological issues, dad was sick, the whole home, everybody was getting sick from mold. And this is what we have to do. So here's what I'm going to say to you. If you're worried about having a mold issue, you're worried about what to do about it, seek a professional, and here's how you can do that. If you're on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast, check the links below. There's a link there that you can click to book a call with me and my team to see it. Is it a mold problem? What can we do? What do you need? What's going to be required to get you the help you need to detox and remove this from your body safely? Safely being the operative word here. You can put yourself in the hospital. You can make yourself worse. You can go into a flare, drive what might not be autoimmune IBD into autoimmunity if not done properly under professional supervision. So be very, very careful when you guys are dealing with this. We're going to reach out, talk to see if what we can figure out, is it a mold infection for you for sure? What does it look like to remove it? And can we help? That's all it is. It's a conversation. How can we help? We've helped hundreds of people. We're pushing 400 different cases of Crohn's colitis fully reversed. Mold is a big problem. Is it a problem for you? Now, this is the time to go into questions. Let's take a look and see what we got. Charmaine had asked, how do you determine if mold is your root cause and how do you get rid of it? Great question, Charmaine. How to know mold is your root cause? Number one, symptoms. Symptoms and history tell us a ton. I had a gentleman come in, 21 years old, and he came in, his symptoms, he had neurological, he had a bunch of just little things we talked about, some respiratory stuff. His history lined up. He was perfectly healthy, 21 years old, started a new job, and he was working in HVAC. 2 months, 3 months in, he got IBS, having been previously healthy. 3 months after that, diagnosed with ulcerative colitis with blood in his bowel. His doctor said, yep, it's genetic. It's because you're Jewish. Jewish people get it more. Happens around this age, teens to 20s. Nothing we can do. Here's mesalamine. Take it for life. And he went, this doesn't make sense. How did this disease come out of nowhere? What do I need to do? He came in. I said, look, turns out the job in HVAC is where he got it from. Didn't wear his PPE, and he got a mold infection. Very, very common issue. Ochratoxin A, very nasty, cancerous, inflammatory toxin. Took us 10 weeks to get out of his system. He was symptom-free, another couple of months to be sure. But after 10 weeks, his symptoms were gone. His doctor said, yep, you're going to be on it for life. And guess what? He's still Jewish. Had nothing to do with it. I feel like Jim Carrey, statistics. It had nothing to do with his ethnicity. It was all to do with the infection. It just took 15 minutes of history. So we can check your symptoms, we can check your history, or you can do a urine test, which can run between $400 and $500. So I suggest talking to me because it's free. Mary, it was her son we're actually talking about. She's been very vocal about it, huge advocate. She says, if you're moving, test the home first. This is great advice. This is sage advice from a woman who tested 14 different homes. They went out, they moved out of their home, immediately got a trailer. Dad and their boy slept in there. He was getting better very quickly. Whole to do. But anyway, they were looking to move to a new home. 14 homes they tested before they found one, maybe 15 homes before they found one that had low enough levels of mold to be acceptable, to not create illness and disease. So we have to check for these. Have to. Joyce asked, how do we feel about the Petri dish mold test? That's an ERMI. You can just gather it up in a Petri dish or a Ziploc bag and send it in. Those are great tests. I would stick to the Envirobiomics, Immunolytics, or the dust test. They're tried, tested, and true. I trust them. My clients trust them, so those are great. Roshan had asked, which one do you prefer between the ERMI, dust test, Immunolytics? Any limitations in the test worth knowing? Not really. They all kind of do the same thing. They collect dust from around the home. The ones to avoid are the air tests, where they set up something like a tripod in the middle of the room. It sucks in the air and says, oh, you do or don't have mold. Not very helpful. The reason for that is mold collects a lot of dust. Mold is on the walls. It's going to collect what's ambient in the air, but it's going to be elsewhere. So don't worry about that so much. A dust test, immunolytics, envirobiomics, ERMI, all the same stuff. I'm cool with that. I don't really care which one you take. I think they're all going to be equivalent as far as I'm concerned. Now, one more time while we're going through this, I want you guys to know there is help. You don't have to do this by yourself. If you're unsure, if you're having an issue with mold, just ask me. Comment, if you're on Facebook, comment the word solution. We're going to have a conversation and say, hey, is it mold? Is it not? Here's what you can do about it. And can we help? If we can't help, don't worry about it. I'll send you to somebody who can. But if we can, getting help for your IBD and finally reversing this disease is one word away. Another question here from Roshan says, any thoughts about mold in the fridge? It's unavoidable as it'll appear sooner or later. It shouldn't be unavoidable. It shouldn't be. If you're having mold recurring in the fridge, check your condenser. There might be a water leak somewhere else, and that condenser, as it's sucking in air, is probably putting mold in your fridge. So it's a condenser issue. Check behind the fridge. Is there mold on the floor, on the wall, behind the fridge? It's sucking spores into your fridge. It's putting mold into the fridge itself, because those spores then are going to be on your food. Every time you open, come here, Callie. You guys are going to meet the menace here. Every time that fridge door opens, she's biting my microphone. Every time that fridge door opens, you're going to have an issue with mold. It's going to get into your food. You're going to ingest it. It's going to colonize in your gut. So check the area around the fridge and see if there's mold in your condenser. We have a question over there?
No, I had a comment.
What's the comment?
If you're building a new home, do not get a fridge with a ice dispenser or a water dispenser.
Hot tip. If you're getting a new home and getting a new fridge and a new appliance, do not get one with an ice dispenser or a water dispenser.
Yeah. Don't get one of those automatic ones built in.
Yeah, they are huge collectors of mold. In fact, you ever seen things like you go to McDonald's or you go to like a fast food restaurant, the pop that come out of those dispensers, huge problems for mold. I'd be willing to bet you find really toxic levels of mold, minimum 50%, if not more, of fast food restaurants across the country in their pop dispensers or their water dispensers. They're gnarly. They're ice dispensers. Even sometimes the milkshake machine. I've seen videos, again, you can fake anything, but I've seen videos of maggots in those bloody machines. And that's up to the franchisee who's running it to actually clean those things. If they don't have the time, don't have the labor, they forget, whatever, it's going to be toxic. You're going to be getting sick. So just get a distiller, man. That's what we got. We take tap water, throw it through the distiller, and it gets our water out for us. Thanks so much for being here. We're going to see you next time. One of my favorite things to hear as an IBD specialist is something along the lines of, I learned more from you in 15 minutes than from my doctor in 15 years. And if this for the first time is really starting to click and it's starting to make sense, and you're going, wait a minute, this might be reversible. I think there's more that I can do. This condition came out of nowhere. It happened to me out of the blue. I was healthy for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and suddenly I wasn't, and you're telling me there's no cause. If you're understanding finally that there is a cause, that something is driving this, I want to invite you to check the link in the show notes below. Send me an email, ask a question, see if a program is a right fit for you, because I promise you, this doesn't have to be a lifelong sentence. You're not doomed to this, and IBD can be reversed.